Over the weekend, celebrities and politicians alike continued to chime in on their thoughts about ABC's cancellation of Jimmy Kimmel. Senator Ted Cruz on Friday said the Federal Communications Commission chairman's threat to revoke ABC's broadcast license over comments made by Kimmel was, quote, dangerous as hell, a far more critical stance than Cruz's Republican colleagues have taken since the late-night host was booted from the air. A free speech argument erupted earlier this week after ABC's indefinitely suspended Kimmel, hours after the FCC chairman, Brandon Carr, had condemned his monologue about the man accused of killing conservative activist Charlie Kirk. On his show, Kimmel had denounced the MAGA movement for, quote, desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them. Cruz added that there was no love lost between him and Kimmel, who has ridiculed the Texas senator over the years. He acknowledged Kimmel's show was losing viewers and said he had lied in his monologue. But Cruz went on to also say the federal government's involvement is a slippery slope for conservatives who have long complained about being silenced by the media. Cruz said a defamation lawsuit against Kimmel or ABC would have been a preferable approach, and he reiterated that while he agreed Kimmel should be off the air, the federal government should not be part of that decision. What do you think? Do you agree with Senator Ted Cruz? Now is the time to give us a call, 713-440-8870. You can also text us at that same number or send us an email at talk@hellohouston.org.
Kind of fascinating point. We're seeing some division from the right on this issue as not standing 100% with what the White House was pushing for, or the FCC, however you want to look at it. I guess my first reaction when I saw that was, okay, Ted Cruz is getting ready to run for president. He's starting to make his separation a little bit from the current administration, but he is going in line with what a lot of the MAGA supporters are in favor of, which is this free speech, which is causing some division within the the far-right Republican Party. And so I think it's interesting. I think he's trying to find his path and also at the same time gathering his supporters, which would be the far-right MAGA.
Be a sensible Republican.
Characterize it as you wish.
I would say this feels very significant because it seems like most Republicans in general are afraid in any way to seem like they are being critical or disapproving anything with the Trump administration. And I would almost say for the exact reason where they don't want to seem that way, because they do want to continue to run and be relevant within the party. But overall, I generally agree with Senator Cruz. I don't think he needs to be making comments specifically about what was happening, if Kimmel should be on air or not. That's ABC essentially to decide. But the government should not be making threats, right? And the FCC basically made the only real threat they have, which is to revoke licenses.
Well, and there's a big controversy about these television stations buying, these broadcast companies buying more and more broadcasts, and these mergers taking place. Because you can imagine if one group was in control of the majority of television stations across the country, then they would pretty much rule the editorial content. And that's not what we want. We don't want one. That would be like just everybody having a Fox station or everybody having an MSNBC station.
Right. And I do believe the FCC does have regulations where a station cannot own a certain majority
That's actually what's at the base of this.
Yes, the marketability.
That's more guideline than law. That's what's happening
But the merger needs approval by the FCC because of the amount of coverage it would take on. In the past, you could only cover so much of the nation percentage-wise with what you could do. They are asking for a larger chunk of it. If they get that approval, I think it's 80, something around 80%.
80%.
They would have. Yeah.
And I believe that
so the FCC has to approve that merger. And the idea is that these stations, this whole motion was because they wanted to curry favor with the administration to get this merger to go through, and that's why they pulled Kimmel.
When I first got in television in 1982, I believe it was 10 was the maximum number of markets you could be in, which is why ABC owned L.A., San Francisco, Chicago, Houston,
Right. Networks could only own so many stations, and the rest had to be independent stations. The network could only own so many. things like Nexstar and these conglomerates
And Sinclair
don't have that
Scripps.
same guideline. You can only have so many O&Os, owned and operated is what they're called.
And again, 713-440-8870 now is the time to join the conversation on Hello Houston. Let's go to the phone lines. Cyrus from Richmond. Welcome, Cyrus. Welcome to Hello Houston. What are your thoughts or questions?
Thank you for letting me on the air. I've been watching this whole fiasco going on for the entire week. The only thing that I find very objectionable is that very few of the stations are playing the entire Jimmy Kimmel clip. They are playing the first part of it. He then goes to a clip of Trump talking about a question that was asked of him of how he felt about Charlie Kirk's assassination. And he goes straight into talking about his ballroom and his beautiful ballroom. And he comes back to Jimmy and he said, this is it. This is how the way the president answers the question about Charlie Kirk's, and everyone's going on about Jimmy Kimmel. I mean, what about the way the president answered his question? It's outrageous. I've been in this business for 60 years. I'm retired now. I've been in PBS stations as executive producer and at the BBC for 12 years. So I know a little bit about this, I can say. And this is outrageous.
Cyrus, thank you for your comments. To clarify a little bit, so some will argue that Jimmy Kimmel's initial statements were all building up to the joke he wanted to do, which is to Cyrus's point. So he talks about the first part about what was happening, then they cut to the White House asking the president about how he is grieving or feeling about the loss of Charlie Kirk, and he gives a quick response to that and then says, but look, we're building the ballroom. And then it cuts back to Jimmy Kimmel with his joke about we're in the fourth stage of grieving, which is construction. So the whole thing was the lead up to the Kimmel joke, which is more of a joke toward the president.
Right. The punchline was the president, not essentially what was happening to Charlie
So
Kirk.
some will argue that the reason this got the attention it did was because the president didn't like the being mocked about his response to the question about Charlie Kirk, and that's what was the ire of the president. There's a lot of confusion back and forth about that. I do want to, though, also throw into the mix as we're talking, then we'll grab another call. As this is going on and the question of where do we have the right to limit what we know and how we share information, the Pentagon and Pete Hegseth made a statement today talking about now how the Pentagon will not allow journalists, or it's requiring credentialed journalists who cover the Pentagon to sign a pledge not to publish or disclose information that has not been authorized for release. That includes unclassified information, and that violators of that might lose their press credentials, which the New York Times, Washington Post, even NPR are saying it compromises the constitutional protections and democratic transparency. So this is happening just today as we're on the air. There does seem to be an assault, again, on coverage of information, and the press in this country started with the Jimmy Kimmel in our attention, but not the beginning of where this issue has been of concern.
Again, 713-440-8870. Let's head to Sandy from Sealy. Sandy, welcome to Hello Houston. What are your comments or questions?
Oh, I always enjoy your show, but I thought it was hysterically funny when Ted Cruz said someone should be off the air because they lie. And if that was the case, all politicians should be off the air.
The point.
Truth seems to be a challenging point for politicians at times. Continue.
Well, that's basically it. I'm a big proponent of everybody should have free speech, whether I agree with it or not.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the whole point of free speech. Thank you, Sandy. You don't have to agree with the speech, but you have to agree with people have the right to express what they're thinking, feeling, their concerns. That doesn't also remove the responsibility for what you say. You are still responsible for what you say, but you do have the right to say it.
Well, a text says, hello, for the first time in my life, I am in agreement with Ted Cruz, at least in what regards the fact that the government has no role in deciding who is or isn't on air. That should always be the people. I mean, we've lived and died by ratings and forever, and either people watch you or listen to you or they don't. Right. And if they don't, then in the commercial aspect, the broadcasters will find out, and the ratings will suffer, and people won't buy as many commercials, and so your revenues go down. It's a pretty simple formula. And so to start playing games with, we're going to take this person off the air because we don't like what they said against the president, is an absolute assault on the Constitution.
Well, excuse me if I paraphrase here, but we moved forward with this when the president spoke on his plane coming back from the UK, where then he even took it to, if people say bad story, and I'm paraphrasing, I know, but if it's a negative story about me, maybe that's not in the best interest of the people, and we should look at their licenses. And so it's now moving beyond this merger area where there was maybe concern into, should the White House be looking, or should even the FCC be looking at individual licenses because of the way they report on someone? If it's an unfavorable story, do you get then challenged and have your license pulled?
Well,
some stories are going to be ugly.
And another thing, though, is ABC canceled Roseanne after she put out some racist tweets back in 2018. So I think that we also have to be careful that we're saying, oh, this is all starting with Jimmy Kimmel. But we have seen there have been other people that have been canceled and
Megyn
pulled.
Kelly was taken off the air from NBC.
From NBC. And so I think that a lot of people are sitting here and saying, well, Jimmy Kimmel also had low ratings. It was about time. And we have to be careful that this isn't just starting with Kimmel, right? We know that
Kimmel
this has happened
was the second highest rated evening late night talk show, so it wasn't really low ratings, lower than what? All of television's landscape ratings have gone down. So, but yes, the system has regulated itself in some way when they found things that were objectionable. Then, there's a responsibility back to who holds the license. We have to look at our license says certain things that we do and don't do and how we do it, and we are beholden to that. And that's how it has to be.
And let me just maybe make an assertion here that Stephen Colbert was released or going to be released at the end of this broadcast year in May. They claim it's low ratings, but Trump sued CBS because of 60 Minutes and won a $15 million lawsuit. Who's to say that part of that deal wasn't, oh, and by the way, let's get rid of this guy? Because Trump's very vocal. We get rid of the talk show host at night, The View, he wants to get rid of them. And anyone who's come out against this administration.
And anybody who's looked at Red Project 2025.
He wants to silence the voices of Americans.
For Stephen Colbert, though, for a point of reference, there was also another merger going on, and they were seeking FCC approval for that merger, and some belief is that was in the body of it was get rid of Colbert, and
but
the merger
CBS
can
was
go
smart.
through.
CBS was smart enough to say, "Oh, we're taking him off because of low ratings," and didn't cause this kind of controversy. ABC at least was honest. It said, "Well, we're going to get rid of Kimmel because we're afraid of the FCC."
Brandon Carr flat out said, I mean, it was a threat.
Yes.
You can do it the easy way, or we can do it the hard way.
Again, and to be sure, it was Nextars. It was Nextars merge. Nextars the one that told ABC, if you don't take Kimmel off the air, we are going to take him off the air. And
I think they
that
had
really
announced
is what
that their
ABC's
stations weren't going to be airing Kimmel,
right?
And
that's what I meant. Yeah.
Right, you need your coverage to make your money.
713-440-8870. Ruben from Rosenberg is on the line. Welcome to Hello Houston, Ruben.
Thank you for having me, ma'am.
What is your comment or question?
Well, the question that I have is where do we draw the line? The president himself said that he likes to go against the people that don't look at the same view that he has. So my question is, do we, the people, elect the president, or he's just going for his own goodwill for his people, for his own sons, for his own family, for the people that get around him? As far as I know, we have freedom of speech in this country, but not anymore. If you're going to say anything against the president, might as well bury yourself or get out of the business, because he's going to put you out of business. The way I see it here is we starting to see another Mexico here. If you guys wanted to elect a Mexican president, you have it on the office now. This guy does whatever he wants. He quiets whoever he wants. And if he doesn't like your view, with you guys, he took money out of you guys because you guys said the truth. You guys are not biased. So he took the money away from you, thinking that he can put you guys out of business. But he doesn't understand that the people elected the man, not himself. The way I see it for the new Constitution is, and it's not we, the people, is I'm Donald Trump going to run this country to the bone, because that's what he's doing, and I just don't understand it. Where do we draw the line versus being freedom of speech and versus being, okay, I'm going to watch what I'm saying because the president's going to come and get me later on if I don't do what he said?
Yeah.
Ruben, thank you for your comments.
Well, the courts draw the lines, but then you worry a little bit about the courts.
And I think it's very interesting, right? We do have people that have a lot of cultural experience, that have lived in other countries, that have experienced this firsthand, or maybe not experienced this. When I say this, have seen other countries in their country and government, how their government works. Living in this country, we're perhaps seeing another way of how our government is working.
You can look at when the president says fake news, that what is he actually saying when he says that? It tends to be news coverage that isn't what he wants or isn't flattering to him suddenly becomes fake. It's not that the news itself is not being reported accurately. It's not that there aren't reporters working very hard to cover the stories. If their outcomes don't match what the administration wants, then they get labeled as the fake news, that they're a threat, that they're...
And I've got to say it, I'm not a big late night TV watcher. I'm usually in bed by 9. I have been watching Stephen Colbert, and the way he is covering it's pretty clever and pretty funny. But
well, it's interesting. We talk about late night
great.
television, but the truth of the matter is late night TV now, late night talk shows are a conduit to make the clips that run all day long the next day. And so many more of us will see what happened on the late night TV as YouTube clips or out there in social media. Yeah. So they know what they're doing. They're kind of producing these moments and sending them out. So when they talk about the ratings being low, I go back to the fact the ratings in traditional broadcasts may be low, but they are having a huge cultural impact on what we talk about, what we see, and the comments we hear.